Most of you might know me through my book, Parent Yourself Again, and just want to update you that my dad has passed away early last November in a hospital with some heart issue. The reason why I'm doing this video is because first I want to update the readers how my relationship with my dad has evolved over the past 4 years after I published my book in 2018. Second, if you are new to my book and to my channel, I hope that this sharing will help you have a better relationship with your parents. And lastly, for personal reason, this has also helped me to process my grief and also to celebrate my beautiful relationship with my dad. So my relationship with my dad was rather rocky at the start. Like, we don't hate each other, but we are so different in many ways. Like, he's the practical person and I'm the more idealistic person. Like, he would be concerned about material things like money, like things that are more tangible, while I'm more head in the clouds, like the ideal person, someone who will do something that he's passionate about instead of having a stable 9 to 5 job in the company. He also focused more on serving his friends and families. Like, he dedicated his time to helping his friends and family solve their problems, while I look at a bigger perspective. I look at humanity as a whole, so I try to help like individuals, whether if I know you or I don't know you, on a personal level. He's also more tradition and conservative, while I'm more open-minded. His comfort zone was to make friends of the same race, while I don't care which country you are from. In fact, if you have a different background from me, I'm kind of intrigued. Like, we also have different views on marriages and or whether we start a family. He thinks that starting a family is about having children so that the children could take care of you when you grow old, but I have a different perspective of it. So because we have such different worldviews and belief system, right? It's not that we crash, it's just that I didn't feel understood as a kid. I didn't feel seen, I don't feel heard. I feel kind of invisible being the middle child. Like, when I was young, I also found him unsupportive of my ideas and rather critical. And growing up, I feel rather subjugated, like I have no freedom. Like, I remember when I was in my 20s and I came back after 12 a.m, maybe like 1 a.m, 2 a.m, I don't remember. He would like wait for me at a window. It's only recently that I understand why. My mom told us that my grandpa doesn't like him to stay out so late. So the belief is being like brought down from generation to generation. When I was in intimate meetup gathering and I was asked what's my favorite movie and how does it relate to my life, the movie that is my favorite is Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo resembles so much of my relationship with my dad. Like, I'm perceived as weak because I have epilepsy when I was 8. I'm like little Nemo with a broken fin, while he is Marlin, who wants to control my movement and where I go. But I'm not really like that rebellious little Nemo that you tell me not to touch the book and I have to touch it to spite my dad. Most of the time, my dad perceives me as obedient. But if something doesn't resonate with me, it's not part of my belief system, or my intuition calls me to a higher vision. For example, being a writer, I'm going to go and follow my intuition. And that is the time where I was a little bit rebellious. I think the biggest tension that we have in our relationship is when I decided to go to Malaysia to become an animator in 2014. When I told him that I'm going overseas to be an animator, he was like, "Are you crazy?" First, you have a decent job in accounting and you want to start all over again and to be an animator. Secondly, aren't there jobs in Singapore? Why do you have to go to Malaysia? Like, the currency conversion, right? You're gonna get 1/3 of your salary. He was also worried about my safety in a foreign country. So at that time, our relationship was super tense. Like, I was struggling between my desire to please my parents and to follow my intuition. I was so stressed that I have this nightmare when I wake up in the middle of night and my dad, in my dream, my dad was killed by a gunshot. Despite this tension that we have, it's also a turning point in our relationship. Even though my dad didn't agree with me, he still accompanied me to Malaysia with my mom and my aunt to make sure that I was safe in Malaysia. to make sure that I wasn't being deceived or cheated. So when I was there in Malaysia, my room was so dirty, it was so horrible. It was like a scene out from the movie Hangover. We cleaned the room together. He even like accompanied me to supermarket to get the necessary stuff before he returned to Singapore. So in that period of time, I realized that my dad does love me. It's just that his love language is different from mine. It's all about act of service, while mine is quality time and physical touch. My third is word of affirmation, and act of service is my fourth actually. It's not something I naturally perceive as love. Like as I was growing up, he didn't give me much attention and try to understand my point of view. Like we barely touched each other and he was critical, so the relationship feels rather distant from my perspective. And I would like to stress is it's not that he worrying about me is a form of love. It's his act of service that is a form of love. If you are parents and you think that worrying for your kids is a form of love, it's not a form of love. It's the act of service that is the form of love that I appreciate. You know how in relationship, we always want the other party to change. Like, why can't they understand how I feel? Why can't they be more supportive? Well, we're all waiting for the other people to change. But let me ask you this, what if the other person never changed? Then what happened to your relationship? It will never going to be changed. So if you truly want your relationship with your parents to be better, be the one to change. So knowing that my father's love language is act of service, I make it a point to say thank you whenever I notice that he did a service for me. So you know how we take our family for granted. Sometimes I will forget to say thank you, but I try my best to make it a point to say thank you because I want to acknowledge my dad that I know he cares about me. Even though my dad said I don't need, I still do it because I get the sense that he like it. And my dad and I are good at different things. Like he's very good at the practical stuff like fixing the computer and the hardware stuff, while I'm better at using software. So he will ask me for help with software and I'll make it a point to help him because I know he values act of service. I know that's how he feels love. From my side, I also don't seek validation from him anymore. I realize I used to feel so misunderstood and not heard because I'm trying to convince him to support my ideas. But when I turned it around and was able to validate myself and really take care of my inner child, I didn't need to convince anyone to support me. I also realized the reason why he's so critical of my path is because he didn't share the same vision as I. The vision is for me and it's not for him. That's why he can't see it. I, being the more ideal person, I can see something that is very conceptual and very abstract, while he needs something that is tangible before he starts to believe. So instead of convincing him to believe in me using words, I show him the tangible result. To prevent him from criticizing me, I stopped telling him what I do. He also never asks what I do. He sort of knows that I write books, but he doesn't know what I write about. But when he saw I have boxes of books being delivered to my house, like in different translated version from foreign publisher, and I never asked him for money, and yet I asked him for investment advice, he knew that I was like financially okay. And also I didn't complain about job, I love what I do. And when he saw that, right, his criticism actually got less and less until there's no more. It's funny that one day he asked me this question, like, how are you able to sell books? Like, who is going to buy your books? Like, the past sensitive me will get offended, thinking he's not supportive. But now I understand that he just doesn't see how this could be done. It's actually a very innocent question. He's asking this question because it's beyond his belief system. He believes that it's only through a stable job where you are able to receive a satisfying income. Even though he doesn't know how I did it or he didn't say it out loud, but I know he began to trust that I have something going on with me. Plus, he knows that I don't like to be criticized. From a very young age, if he says something negative to me, I'll just walk away. I will not be there to receive his criticism. And later part of our life when when our relationship have improved, one day he was just casually saying like, "Oh, you're so stupid to do that." Then I stare at him, and he's like, "Nah, not stupid as in that you are stupid. It's more of an expression." Then we both laugh. Like, he didn't criticize me because of bad intention. He criticized me because he thinks his path is the right path for me. He thinks that the practical way is the way to go, while I go for the intuitive way because it works for me. Some of the reviews I received for my book Parent Yourself Again says that it's as though your parents are looking over your shoulders while you're writing this book. And it's not because of that. It's because I developed an understanding of my dad. I can write a book just to bitch about him. But this is not how I feel about him. First, I don't write about topic until I have a higher perspective of it. Secondly, after living with him for almost like 4 decades, right, I kind of have a feel of what he's like. Yes, I might not agree with his view and perspective, but yet we can still live harmoniously together. I also have a compassion for my dad because beyond his dad persona, I could see he has a very fearful inner child who thinks of all the worst case scenario, and that's why he's so overprotective, because he can see all the dangers that's around him. Understanding others is very important if you want a good relationship with them. From my perspective, you might think that I don't get the love that I wanted, but that's because I already give myself the love that I want. I don't need him in particular to give me love. It would have been nice to have my love language be fulfilled too, but when my attitude towards him changed, his attitude towards me changed too. Even though it's very minimal, there is still a display of my love language. I just have to find the small moments that we have and really appreciate them. For example, quality of time. After 2018, my book was published. I actually went to Malaysia with my dad in JB. I think it's around 2019 or 2020. Like, I've been to the other side of the world, like I've been to US, but I have not been to a neighboring city, which is Johor Bahru. My dad tells me, why not I show you how to take the bus across the highway to JB. So I actually got to spend half a day with my dad. And I never knew how much my dad liked to take selfie. We were just outside the shopping center and he asked me to take a photo of him. Then we're in the shopping center. He was like taking the picture of himself and he wanted to take a picture of us. Like, this selfie taking photo that is not a sight I've seen of him. I know he takes picture with my mom and my aunt when they go for holidays, but I personally did not experience that side of him. Our family doesn't travel together because my dad has this like limiting belief that if we as a family travel together on a plane, the plane might crash and all of us will die and there will be no more descendants. So it's nice to travel alone with him and spend some quality time with him. And also when he was in ICU for like more than a week in the hospital, I was actually able to accompany him overnight for several nights. Sometimes we just look at each other, like he was sleeping and he turned around and he looked at me and I was like sitting there just looking to him eye to eye, and there's this feeling of love between us. Like, we don't have to say much, we don't have to say I love you, but we just recognize this feeling of love. And it's of a very big significance for me to stay with him throughout the nights, because when I was 8 and I remember waking up in the middle of the night in a hospital bed because I have epilepsy, my dad was actually sleeping rather uncomfortably in the makeshift bed beside my hospital bed. So I feel very fortunate that I have this opportunity to return this favor. And even though I was in the ICU with him, like I was supposed to take care of him and accompany him to sleep, right? He's still worrying about whether like my heart can take it because I have some heart issues. He also like worried, do I have enough sleep or am I too cold? He's still being his like overprotective dad. When it comes to physical touch, my dad is not a hugger. We have never hugged each other. Only time we touched each other was the night before his op. I was sitting there watching him sleep and he asked me to come over and he wanted to hold my hand. And we just hold our hands like for maybe like less than a minute. Like, I tickled his palm and he tickled mine. Then he just threw my hands off because that's as much physical touch he wanted. But it doesn't have to be very much, like that small little gesture. I really appreciate very much. We're all born into a family for a reason. As I was reflecting my relationship with my dad, I felt like I was born into this family to widen my dad's perspective. My dad used to believe in corporate punishment as a way to discipline his kids. He would use cane or even a belt, but because I have epilepsy when I was 8, he stopped using corporate punishment. He saw that I have to suffer from such a illness at a young age. He couldn't bear to discipline us in this way. His spirit is calling out to him to grow and expand and to challenge his belief about parenting. So as I grow up, my dad never hits me at all. Like it's almost like I was meant to be born to this family and be sick, to awaken his deeper dimension and to challenge his belief. He thinks he can stay in his comfort zone, but sorry dad, I'm here to get you out of your comfort zone by providing contrast. I'm actually very proud of how much my dad grew over the years. Like he was forced to expand, being practical and having a son who is idealistic like me. He was forced to accept things that are beyond his belief system that he normally won't accept. To him, I might be too trusting and naive, but in the end, he's still willing to seek me for advice. In between the times he was admitted to the hospital, I taught him how to breathe more slowly and deeply because I saw he was like hyperventilating, right? And he's open to me transferring life force energy, and he also asked me how to relax. Like even though he still feels frustrated, like he don't understand what he's doing, but at least he's willing to try. He's more open. We start from very different worldview, but somehow along the way we kind of build mutual trust and respect with each other. And I'm very grateful to have him as my dad. And it's not whether he's a good father or a bad father. It's not about judging your parents. We are born into this family to help each other to grow. Maybe you have a really bad experience with your parents, but this contrast that you have with them will help you to have more clarity of who you are as a person and what you want out of life. And it also points you to the path of your growth. If you are able to see the big picture and have a higher perspective, you will know that there is no coincidence why this family is formed. Your soul chooses to be in this family because it's seeking a certain growth and expansion. Like for me, I really build resilience and have early training of people not trusting my intuition. And that's okay. I'm still going to follow my intuitive impulse even if my loved one doesn't support my intuition. And it's so funny that a head in the clouds person like me is born into a family with parents that can help him with the day-to-day practical stuff. Like if it wasn't for my dad or my mom, I would probably be a delusion dreamer. This creative, idealistic visionary needs a day-to-day practical parents to help him balance. If you're someone who doesn't have a good relationship with your dad or your mom, I'm just going to say this. We can always hate someone, but what is that going to do? At best, it's going to make them feel guilty about what they have done or not done. But this will only result in two people with a low vibration. Alternatively, you can be the one to change. Whether the person changes or not, when you change, your relationship with the other person doesn't stay the same anymore. It cannot stay the same anymore. So instead of waiting for the other person, why not be the person to change? And you have to ask yourself this important question. If your parents are gone tomorrow, are you able to live with it? Even though I have some grief to process, I'm mostly at peace. And why I was able to be so at peace is because first, I have a different perspective of death than most people have. And second, I have no regrets whatsoever. I did the best that I could, staying overnight and accompanying my dad, trying to understand his perspective and knowing where he's coming from, trying to display love by using his love language. By the end of his physical life, I have nothing much to say to him. Like, we come to a level of understanding that goes beyond words. Several nights in hospital, I'll be just like watching him sleep, and we don't have any conversation, but yet we feel such love and respect for each other. You don't want to be in a situation when your loved one left, then you begin to regret that there are other things that you didn't say or you didn't do. So hopefully this video will help you to cherish the loved one that you have now.